I have a husband and two children. My son Eric is 33 and has autism, and my daughter Jennifer is 30 and has dyslexia. In kindergarten, we noticed she was starting to struggle. They were introducing letters in a bigger way, and she wasn't getting it. And they was really obvious when they did an exercise called invented spelling, which meant they were supposed to um, write a story. And obviously, in kindergarten, they couldn't write, but they were supposed to spell the words any way they thought they should be. And she wrote a story about a chicken, and she spelled chicken LDXR. So she wasn't even close. And that was, and we talked to her teacher, and her teacher agreed that Jennifer should be evaluated. We tried to get her tested immediately, but there were several testers who were unwilling to test because she was only 5 and they thought it was too early. But then we found Betty Levinson, who was a noted psychologist and one of the founders of the Atlantic Seaboard Dyslexia Education Center, and she agreed to test Jennifer. Now, it was 25 years ago, so I don't remember the exact names of the tests that she did, but I know she did educational and IQ testing. And she found that Jennifer was very bright, but there was a huge gap between her cognitive level and her abilities. One test she showed us in particular that I remember, all Jenny had to do was look at an E and circle the one that was the same as the first one. And they were different orientations. And she got a 2 out of 10 on that test. She would have done better if she had guessed. So that made it very obvious to me and to the tester that there was a problem. Unfortunately, my first response was relief that it wasn't autism or something more serious. I laugh at that now. So I thought the public schools could teach her. Dr. Levinson mentioned Orton Gillingham tutoring, but again, I thought, it's not autism, and that's what public schools are for. And we decided to put her in public school. We went to them. We decided she would repeat kindergarten because she had a late birthday in November and she had a learning disability. And they did argue the diagnosis because of her age, but they eventually accepted it. They said kindergartners don't know letters. And I said, well, Jenny's been in school since she was 3. So her classmates did. But they agreed to an IEP, an individual education plan, which gave her 30 minutes of speech therapy and 30 minutes of special education instruction after school, which was supposed to address her reading disability. So I didn't know how bad it was at first. Jennifer kept a lot inside. Um, she only had what she liked her teacher at first. She'd always liked school. And she had one friend. I knew that. She only had one friend, a deaf girl in her class. But it was only later, like after we took her out of school, that I found out she was being seriously teased. Jenny started getting sick a lot and wanted to stay home from school. And so in second grade, things started to unravel. We went to an IEP meeting, and her second grade teacher said she did not believe in dyslexia. Jenny's IEP said that that teacher could only mark spelling errors on her spelling work. And the teacher said in the meeting, Jenny will never learn to spell if I don't mark everything wrong, and continued to mark everything wrong. So Jenny continued to try to get out of school, and we sent her unless she had a fever or obvious symptoms. I used illness as an excuse to avoid school, and I thought she would get through it. Jenny still couldn't read. One night doing her homework, she was crying, and she said, the dumbest kid in the class can do this. I must be really stupid. And of course, I'd had testing. I knew she was bright, but she said, you're my mom. You have to say that. And she got sicker. And eventually she started passing out and falling down, and her doctor put her in a wheelchair. And at that point, I thought, wow. And the doctor sent her to Children's Hospital for testing. And in the hospital, they found that they couldn't find any physical reason for her being sick. So they diagnosed her with conversion disorder, and they said it was because of her educational placement based on what we had told them in her educational testing. They said school was literally making her sick. Well, Jenny was scared to death at school. I mean, she cried even at the idea of going to school. And I was angry at the school, at the teacher who didn't follow the IEP, at the principal who didn't insist on it. And I was angry that I hadn't done more sooner because I was busy dealing with her brother's autism education. And I thought I was angry I trusted the school to deal with it. So Dr. Levinson had also recommended Orton Gillingham tutoring, and we tried the special education at the school instead. So this time I decided to find an Orton Gillingham tutor. It was 45 minutes away for an hour, and we drove down there once a week, drove Jenny down there once a week for tutoring. And she started to make progress, but it was clear that she needed more. I didn't know what to do, and her Orton Gillingham tutor told me about a small private school, friendship school, that was teaching grades 1 through 8 and did dyslexia education, that was getting a new principal that they thought would be a great placement for Jenny. So it wasn't as expensive. It was still a lot of money, but it was what Jenny needed. So we sent her to friendship school. It was different in every way. So one period a day was Orton Gillingham tutoring. So we didn't, at least we weren't paying for tutoring separately because that was happening in class. They had small class sizes, up to 15, they said, but most of them had fewer. And we only found out later that when Jenny started, she was so afraid of any school that she hid under the table. But they didn't tell us. They just worked with her until she was comfortable in school and made friends, and she started to like school again. She didn't feel different because everybody there had dyslexia, and she thrived. She bragged that she now spells better than most of her friends. So we noticed she started to struggle again in 8th grade at friendship. And in hindsight, I think she was afraid of graduating and changing schools. One special ed teacher told her that her brother has autism. Your brother has autism and he can do this. What is wrong with you? And of course, if I'd known about that, I would have followed up immediately. But I didn't find out till way too late. So early intervention is key. Get Orton Gillingham as soon as you can, either a tutor or, if possible, a private school for students with dyslexia. If public school is the only option, because I understand, we were able to at least borrow money. That's not everybody can. So if you have to go to public school, I would say to advocate for your child, volunteer as much as you can while they're there so you see the environment they're in. But my other advice would be, don't think that the public school will do what's best for your child. Because even with an IEP, public school education only has to be minimally beneficial to be considered a success. And I would advise parents not to settle for that when their child's future is on the line.